are back, baby. It's another edition of Average Sports by some average guys, Eric and Ty. I'm Ty. On the other line is
I'm Eric. What's going on?
Glad to have you guys tuning in. It's episode 21 of Average Sports. Can you believe it? We are more reliable than Le'Veon Bell ever was.
Yeah, on that year, I like that burn. We'll see week 10.
What are we not talking about in this episode? My goodness. Them Lakers and King LeBron, who couldn't get a win, now they did. We're over it. Don't care. Heard too much about it. You know who did win a lot the entire MLB season was the Boston Red Sox. My goodness.
Yeah, they were all over the place, man. Well, all over the place in a good way. I mean, they had well over 100 wins, and they dominated through the playoffs, and in the World Series, they were crushing it and scoring runs with 2 outs, and that made a huge difference in that series, obviously. And it looked quite one-sided with them getting all those two out runs. So they took out the Dodgers. So
real easy. Yeah, and we were talking about it all season long. If you go back to previous episodes, we were saying who could beat the Astros. Well, I think we have the answer to that. So congrats going out to the Boston Bo Sox. I also have an interesting stat real quick. I'm going to plug in from MLBBaseball.com. 49 seasons of the postseason era in the past, the team with the best record has only won the World Series a total of 13 times. So normally you can expect the most winningest team, they don't even go that far or even to the World Series. Well, the Red Sox did it in 2007 and 2013 and this year. So they tied the record with the Yankees, who have done that also 3 times in that span. Kind of unreal stuff. So they don't mind the pressure of being the best team in baseball. They own it. So
no, that's an interesting stat. I like that.
Yeah. So what were you looking at for this week, or since the last time we were hanging out?
Normally I kind of do this a little bit differently, but I was just going to kind of give a general rundown of some of the games, college football that I didn't catch, every single one of these start to finish, but there were some good games in the top 25. So Georgia tops Florida over the weekend in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, although I don't think they call it that anymore in today's climate. Penn State, number 17, Penn State tops Iowa, number 18. 14 Washington State beats up on Stanford, number 24. Big upset, Oklahoma State edged out Texas, number 6. That's a big win for Oklahoma State. And if you haven't heard that press conference at the end of the game from Oklahoma State head coach, his name is slipping my mind. He's had a few really good ones in the past. Check that one out. And then number 12, Kentucky, just outlasts Missouri here. And then Cal edges out number 15, Washington. So a couple of top 25 teams go down this weekend as well, too.
Well, lots of sports were happening when you have the World Series going on, of course. And that means you also have hockey, which we're going to talk about not that much in this episode. But basketball's also now a couple weeks in. So we're going to talk about those standings. And for our topic of the day, of course, NFL. We got to talk a little bit about that. Eric, by the way, our little bet between the Browns and how many wins, the over-under at 4.5 that we had, are you starting to sweat, my man? Because they have 2.5 wins right now.
Yeah, 2.5 wins. I mean, they've kind of, they pissed away a couple of wins there, and I mean, it was
in glorious Browns fashion.
There was a point there you would have thought, you could argue that they could have been 4-0, and since then they haven't looked super good. They fired their head coach and offensive coordinator this week as well too. So we'll see if a change comes. But I may be sweating it a little bit if they can't pick it up here. Although realistically, we're halfway through the season. We're about halfway to that goal at 2.5. So,
that's right. They're trending. Right. They're right on it. So that is the underlying topic of the episode, is talking about the impressions and also some trades that have gone on at the half point of the 2018-19 NFL season. So let's get into it. Speaking of with the trades, you were telling me even pre-show, Eric, of some notable names moving to new cities. Enlighten us.
Yeah, so there have been, a couple of trades going on here. I'm trying to get it pulled back up here because it failed on me here. But we did have a couple of big trades that even happened today. You know, we had a few that, went over before the deadline. So Amari Cooper ended up moving. We had, Eli Apple go before the trade deadline. And then today there were a couple of big trades. There was a big one out of Denver.
Demarius Thomas, right?
Demarius Thomas moves to Houston.
Wow.
That was a big one right there. I'm still trying to pull up the
Which I like
tracker
that
here.
trade. Yeah, if he's down there in Houston with a quarterback that's pretty accurate, something that maybe he hasn't had in Denver for a little while, I think you have the makings of some pretty powerful offense. And the Texans already sitting in the top of that division, so that's a huge trade, a good pickup for them.
Yeah, so I finally got to pull back up here because I had lost it there.
All right.
So,
well, what else has been going on?
So some of the other ones was Ty Montgomery goes to the Ravens to kind of help out that backfield right there. Leaves the Packers.
Because Green Bay, they were already pretty flush with running backs. I mean, since they had Aaron come back and who else were they relying on?
No, I don't have their depth chart.
Okay, pass on me. But they were running back heavy.
Jamal
So
Williams.
I think that. Yep. Thank you, Williams.
And then the Packers make another trade. The Packers moved a couple of players here, man, and so I mean, you might be a little, wondering if the Packers are just kind of sailing it in here. They traded Clinton Dix to the Redskins.
Interesting.
That was the last trade before the deadline happened. Apparently, the Rams feel like they need more defensive line help because I disagree. They picked up Dante Fowler from the Jaguars. The big one we talked about, Demarius Thomas going to the Texans. And another big name on the move from the Lions, Golden Tate, goes to the Eagles.
Wow.
And that was a big one right there. And that wasn't, the only thing that kind of happened for the Lions, too. They also picked up Damian Harrison from the Giants as they were selling stuff off a couple days before the trade deadline.
Yeah. And that should work out for Philly, I would think. I feel like they have been missing a component this season, sitting at 4-4. So hopefully, that does a number for them. Green Bay, though, is interesting to make that many moves in such a balanced division. Do you feel like the NFC North is worth competing over since you got they're split teams basically, and you should want to aim high for that one? No one's running away with it.
Yeah, no one's running away with that. I mean, I think you make a really, really good point there that, all the teams are pretty even as far as records go. And, I'm still pretty convinced, even though, they got beat up this past weekend, but the Vikings are still the best team in that division. Although not far behind, I would put the Bears. I'd put the Packers substantially lower and kind of on that tier with the Lions. And I can see the Lions being better than the Packers in certain weeks and vice versa.
Overrated Bears, huh?
Their defense is legit. Yeah, let's be real. Their defense is legit. Is Mitch Trubisky going to be able to be great all season? No, I highly doubt it. I don't think their offensive weapons are out of this world or what we had expected, with Allen Robinson being a bit disappointing and Jordan Howard not doing almost anything this year, of relevance. But they've been able to manage and stay in games defensively, and if you're able to do that, and their offense has been doing enough. And they've had a couple of really good weeks, but I think they're not as good as the Vikings, in my opinion. But I think they are better than the Packers at the moment.
Yeah, if I were the Lions, I would certainly be saying, "Hey, we can do this. Of course, it's only going to take a couple of weeks, and we can theoretically be in first place of the division." You never want to give up on a season if that is the case going halfway through your entire season. If you're the Giants, however, and you have somehow the Redskins sitting on top at 5-2, and you have the Eagles at 500 with 4-4, but the Giants 1-7. Are they going to actually get rid of Eli? What for this trade deadline? What do you do with that?
That was something that both of us had picked a bit of a turnaround for them.
Really?
I think you had them. You had them a
surprise.
lot higher than I did. I had them in the 6-win range, and I don't think they're going to get to 4 or 5 as bad as they're playing.
Not at this point. Yeah.
You had them a much higher than that in the division that's still, decently stacked. I'm very shocked that Washington has somehow managed to pull off 5-2, where they're sitting right now with the Eagles having a bit of a hangover and Dallas having 0 receivers. to do anything offensively with them. So, their defense is, I'm putting this out there, their defense is the top ranked defense at the moment, points per game in the NFL. So their offense hasn't been doing very much for them to help on that. So.
Okay. Let it be noted as well that you are a Dallas fan.
I am a Dallas fan.
Cowboys.
Love the Cowboys.
It's a little biased when you give them the number one defense. And you got to win some games, too.
Well, points per game.
Sure. Okay. They lead the stat then. That's good. Good for them. The Rams are the best defense. I'm just going to put that.
I don't know about the best defense. They're the best team.
Any other shakeups that we might want to expect? San Francisco has had back to their woes with quarterback injury and just the inability to win games. And then Arizona, though, they've won 2. Do we start seeing a comeback for a wild card game for them, or
that's a bad team,
really, right? Yep,
that's a
they
bad
seem
team with bad play calling. They have really struggled to utilize David Johnson. If you have looked or watched any of the games for David Johnson this year, before Mike McCoy got fired, it was, hey, man, we're going to go ahead and run David Johnson up the middle 20 times a game. And, then you're disappointed at the production that he's doing because that's not his style. Split him out, make him a wide receiver, give him screen passes, let him work in the open field. And they just weren't doing that, which cost Mike McCoy his job. And Byron Leftwich didn't seem to do much better with him, although he did look a little bit better. But they still ran him up the middle way too many times. And, they have this great weapon, and they're not able to utilize it at all.
Yeah. Well, we still have 8 more weeks left of the NFL. I guess actually 9 when you count the bye weeks. We still have plenty of football left to see, and we're going to be talking about it through the rest of the year as well as the NCAA. But right now, let's talk a little bit about NBA. We teased that a minute ago for our lightning standings. Let's just strike right into it. Let's hear the thunderclap, Eric.
Thunderclap.
There it is. Yeah. Thank you for that. I needed that.
So I'm going to run us through the East here. You got Milwaukee completely undefeated. Now we're early in the season, guys, but they're 7-0. Toronto's right behind them, 6-1. Then you got a bunch of 4-win teams in there with varying losses. Detroit, Boston, Indianapolis, Philly, and Charlotte all have 4 wins, anywhere between 1 and 4 losses for them as well, too. Miami Heat are 3-4. Chicago Bulls, New York Knicks, Brooklyn Nets, Orlando Magic, Atlanta all have 2 wins and 5 losses each. And then down with single wins, Washington and Cleveland. 1 win and 5 losses, 1 win and 6 losses for
you would expect a little bit more from Cleveland since the Lakers aren't really winning that much, but there you have it, 1-6. Golden State, no surprise, they have 1 loss in the year, 7-1, 5-1 for Denver, which is actually a bigger surprise, coming out with some wins. Good for them, but albeit, as you mentioned, that still early. San Antonio, Utah, New Orleans, the Clippers, Portland, Trailblazers all have 4 wins, and Sacramento is actually buried because they played more games. 5-3 is their record, so they're a little bit of a mislabeled there on as far as where they're positioned. But Memphis, Minnesota all have 3, and the Lakers, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Dallas, they have 2 games. Then you follow it with OKC, Houston, which has a surprising 1-4 record, and Phoenix at 1-5 to start. But again, long season, plenty more basketball to catch you up. But just out the gate, seeing where teams are starting off, kind of interesting to see. I've got to say, I watched a couple of basketball games. I don't see any records on the scoreboards. I haven't talked about this in a while, Eric, but I'm calling for some freaking scores. I want to see the records. Yeah, I don't think that's too much to ask. Anytime I put on a game on, you know who does it is NBC with football. I love it. I think it's great. And for football, carrying that theme, Eric, we got a Who You Got coming to you. And this one's all about the Super Bowl coming in 2019 in early February for this season. Now that we're midway through, I think you can make a pretty good decision on who you got is going to the Super Bowl. We have not talked about this, so no. I'm unaware of what you're going to pick. You're unaware of what I would pick.
Yeah. I was just looking, and we were just chatting about this, and I was like, because we were talking about this episode, and I was like, oh my God, you were asking, like, you feel good on that question? I was like, yeah. But we're going to pick the same team. So,
you think so?
I'm going with a rematch of Super Bowl 36 Patriots versus the Rams. However, I'm picking a different winner. The Rams are winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick at all. I have the Rams.